All right, I think we can start now. So, welcome everyone. It's a real pleasure to have you here. It's my first session on a LinkedIn event, a LinkedIn Live. I don't know how do they call that, but anyway, it's quite convenient actually. So it's great. Um, so during this session, I will show you. I will present just the agenda, but the goal is to make a live demo of the platform, the Qovery platform, explaining what it is, why it's quite useful, how can you can use the platform on AWS and so on and so forth. But before we start, just a few words on myself. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Qovery. I'm an engineer myself. I'm quite experienced. I was working like 10 years ago in infrastructure at Ulink, and I did that for like very long time. Was paid basically to help developers to deploy their application, not in the cloud at the time, but it was like a bit similar. All those things that you call DevOps. And yeah, this is where I started to think about like how can we just scale our knowledge and make like a product that could be like usable by anyone that would have needs to have like our knowledge. And this is where we started to build Qovery 2 years ago. So yeah. So the agenda for today is covering what's Qovery, because most of you are like quite new. You probably not use the platform. I know some of you are like customers, users, but let's talk about what's Qovery first. Then I will make like a quick live demo of the platform. So the goal is to deploy a first application on AWS, and you will see like very fancy things. And we'll talk about like what we plan next, there is like another point that I want to cover also is just showing additional features and what we'll do next. And we have like a Q&A session, but in fact, the Q&A session, it's up to you to ask your question as they come. You don't need to wait the end. I will try to just respond to all of that. And if, because there is like, I thought that just before, but there is some delay between the tool that I'm using to stream on LinkedIn and the response. So if I take some time just to read your question and respond, it's normal. So don't be afraid of that. Okay. All right. So first, let's jump into Qovery. So some of you, maybe you have already seen this like this information somewhere on our website, but Qovery is not first a hosting platform. It's a tool. It's a product that helps any developers to deploy their applications on AWS in the cloud, because we are supporting other cloud providers, but I'm not going to talk about that. And the idea is how can we make like a developer efficient just to deploy their applications, meaning getting like the best experience ever. So it's a bit similar in terms of experience to what you can get with a platform as a service like Heroku. So it's a Heroku-like experience, but it's deploying on your cloud account. Qovery is not a hosting platform. So it's a product that you install on your AWS account, and then you can start to deploy your application. You will see that. So basically, as a developer, you may use already GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. You have all your code that are like hosted on those platforms, those Git providers. So what you can do with Qovery is to picking the repository that you want to deploy, selecting the different services like the databases, Postgres, MySQL, MongoDB, Redis, and so on and so forth. And then from that, you can deploy your application on your AWS account. The idea behind Qovery is that we are not locking you in any way, because there is one part that is running on your cloud account. Okay, so you have access to that part and you can extend that part, meaning that we probably provide like 90% of what you need. But if you need to do and use specific services that are provided by AWS but not supported officially by Qovery, there is no limitations. You can do whatever you want. Okay. So Qovery is used by more than 20K developers around the world. We are working with healthcare company, insurtech, fintech, all around the world. There is no border. Everyone is working almost the same. We have customers in Australia, in South Africa, in the US, in Europe. It's almost all the same. They're using AWS and they want to simplify the way that they ship their application. Okay. So in terms of possibilities with Qovery, we cover from the build to the scale of your applications, but we define Qovery as a CD platform. It's not really a CI, but we integrate like what we call a Qovery CI, meaning that we can build your applications, the platform can build the applications, then deploy it, run it, and scale it. But if you want to integrate like your own CI because you're using GitLab CI, Cycle CI, using GitHub Actions, you can plug that to Qovery and then just deploy your application with Qovery. It works well, okay? And obviously it's running on AWS. So let's jump into the demo right away. So first, this is the web interface of Qovery. So you have access to, you are able to use and deploy your applications by using only the web interface. You don't need to install anything outside of installing Qovery on your cloud account. And you will see it's something that we're doing from the web interface directly. Okay, we have multiple interfaces that you can use. We have a CLI, we have an API that you can also use, and we have like a Terraform provider. Okay, so here I'm just going to show you with the web interface. So basically, I can connect with my GitHub account, but you can use your GitLab or Bitbucket account. It works, and you can even you can start to deploy applications coming from different repository and different accounts. There is no limitation on that. So let's jump into my account, my GitHub account. All right. So the first thing that you need to do when you get access to the platform, so to the Qovery platform, is to create what we call an organization. An organization is super similar to what you get on GitHub, for instance. It's from one single place you can start to manage different projects, different infrastructure, and give access to that organizations to other team members. Okay. So here, as a user, I have like multiple organizations, but I'm going to pick one that is already configured, the Qovery RIM. All right. So once you created your organization, you have to add what we call a cluster. Okay. So this is where you start to say, hey, I want to deploy my application. I want to deploy my application on AWS, for instance. I want to speak like one region, let's say US East 1. Give a cluster name. So it could be like prod cluster US East 1. So setting your credential, so your AWS credential, so your access key ID and secret access key. Then do next, select different options. And then from that, when you create your cluster, you deploy it, then Qovery will take care of like creating the whole infrastructure. Meaning that for your applications, your stateless application will deploy an EKS cluster. So it's a Kubernetes cluster managed by AWS, and will install the Qovery dependencies on that cluster. It's a vanilla cluster. We don't modify anything. It's a pure vanilla cluster, but we install an agent and a deployment engine that is completely open source and that you can find on GitHub. That part is completely open source, and that's the part that is installed on your cloud, on your cluster, and is in charge of deploying the infrastructure and also deploying the application. Okay. So here, I'm not going to create one. I have already two clusters that are running, one on US East 2 and one on Paris, basically. Okay, so this is something that is quite interesting as well. You can start to manage also different Kubernetes cluster from one interface in different regions. And what you can do also is obviously you can get into the settings of it and starting to fine tune the different resources like the CPU, the RAM, and the number of nodes that you have. Because it's a EKS cluster, you can adjust the number of nodes that are running and also the size of those nodes. Okay. Hello, Thibaut. Nice to see you here. All right. One other aspect concerning that, I think that is very important just to remind. So we create a VPC dedicated to that cluster. So for every single cluster that you create with Qovery, you will get like a VPC that is attached. And what you can do, because we manage that out of the box, is that you can start to do what we call VPC peering, meaning that you can connect your cluster each together if you need to. and also integrates your Kubernetes cluster, your EKS cluster with other services on AWS by doing VPC peering. Okay, so it's well supported with Qovery. Most of our customers are doing that because they have external services that they want to connect to in a secure way, and it's completely possible. On the member part, so just to go back, the installation operation. So when you install a cluster, it takes approximately 30 minutes to install the cluster. So you don't need to do anything. Everything is covered by Qovery. So it means that you can go back, you can leave, take a coffee, coming back, and then it's fully ready. You're ready to deploy your application. You are able, obviously, to add team members and set permissions to them. Everything is explained in the documentation, but basically we have created simple permissions with admin, owner, developer, and viewer. They have different accesses, and it's quite convenient to use. You can invite your team members by email and in a very secure way. Okay. So let's go back to my list of projects. So this is the list of projects. I have multiple projects running on my infrastructure, but I'm going to create a new one for, let's say it's a LinkedIn event demo project. It's a very good project. I like that project. So into that project, you have, with Qovery, you have the concept of environment that is at the heart of what we build, meaning that you can have multiple environments into one project. Production, staging, development environment, they can be created manually, but also dynamically. I will just explain that part because it's a very important one, meaning that, for instance, you can have what we call preview environment. You can have environment that are created because you create a new pull request. It's something that is known as preview app on Heroku, and also preview environment on Vercel and Netlify and so on and so forth. And it's very convenient. You will see why just after. But here, first, I'm going to create a new environment. Let's say it's the production environment that I want to create on US cluster, on the US cluster. So I'm going to now add my first application just before into one environment. The concept is that you can control a group of applications working together with other services, meaning that you can have a backend, you can have a front end, you can have databases, all those components that they can work together, and they will be at the same place into that environment. Okay, so they can start to communicate with the private network or the external network. It's up to you to do that, but it's very convenient here because you will be able to manage all of them from one single interface. Okay, I'm picking one question just before moving forward. As far as organization, do you recommend creating separate organizations in Qovery for each organization unit in AWS in order to keep a good separation of concern? That's the question of Felix. Hey, Felix, nice to see you here, and thanks for asking that. Absolutely. Not really the organization itself on Qovery. So you can have one single organization on Qovery and start to manage multiple clusters and then separate the accesses. And in fact, in terms of infrastructure, they will be completely isolated. But it's up to you. You can do whatever you want. If you want to not share the access to one organization with other team members and you want to clearly isolate that part, even with Qovery at the organization level, you can do that. It's up to you. You can do what you want. But the recommendation here is that if it's part of the same company, let's say, so it's one organization, it's maybe better just to have all those clusters, all those different pieces working in the same space. Then it's much more convenient for you to manage that. Okay. Yes, Joachim, that's a very good that's a very good point. Yes. Can you connect with private GitHub repo or GitHub Enterprise? Very good question. Private GitHub repos, they are supported well. You see here, I have my two accounts that are completely connected. So my GitLab is a private one. My GitHub is it's a public one, but I have also some private repos. And you can obviously give access to Qovery to that repos. But GitHub Enterprise is another offer. It's not supported yet, but it's something that we plan. And if you want to, you can get access to the public roadmap of Qovery through roadmap.qovery.com. Okay, and you will see you can vote for that and you can submit that information. All right, so let's deploy my first application here. I have like a backend application that I know it's a Django one. So I'm thinking here what happened is that I picked my GitHub account. I gave a name to my application, okay? I select the branch that I want to deploy. So basically it's the main branch that I want to deploy. And as we do support mono repository, you can also change the root application path. But here in my case, it's like a very simple application. There is no mono repo. It's not like one repo with multiple applications to that. So I keep that way. And here we have two different build modes. We have the build pack mode and the Docker file. So you can use your own Docker file to build the applications and deploy it. And the Docker file will be from that repository. So it means that here I can use the Docker file that is at the root of my repository. But in fact, I'm going to use Buildpack. Buildpack is a technology that has been open sourced by Heroku to identify, to detect the language and the framework that is used. And then from that, we'll build like a final container image without even providing a Docker file. So that's what I'm going to use because my application is well supported. It's a Python one, and all the most common languages and frameworks are well supported by Buildpack. So let's use that one, okay? So, and set the port, the internal port. That's not the external port, it's the internal port of my application. So my application is listening on that port, okay? I create the application here. And what happened is that this application is created, but not yet deployed. In fact, it's not deployed, just created. What I need to do before, it's just because my application is expecting that, is setting the port variable and the value 3004 times 3, okay? I can change the scope, but I'm gonna stick to the application scope here. I'm not digging into what's the scope. In fact, the scope is that you can declare an environment variable or a secret at the environment level, meaning that all the application from that environment can get access to that environment variable. And it's very convenient when you start to have multiple projects getting access to the same resources. Okay, so that's it. I'm not even getting into the details of the application, CPU, RAM, and all those things. I just want to deploy my application right away. Okay, so I deploy it. And now, if we go back to the environment level, we see what happens is that my environment, my application is in deploying state. It's queued and deployed on my US cluster, okay? So I can take a look at all the information. They are streamed directly from my infrastructure. And here, my application is built and is going to be deployed. But before deploying, then it will be pushed into my ECR registry, okay? Then it will be deployed on my Kubernetes cluster. Then the network will be configured. A temporary domain will be attached, and also a TLS1. And it will be accessible from outside. That's pretty cool. Let's wait a few moments. Do you have any questions from that? Okay. All right. So in the meantime, because the application now is in building state and will be deployed, it takes approximately a few minutes, few seconds, it depends on the application, but here it will take like few seconds. I can get into the settings of my app. And if I want to change the CPU, the RAM, no problem. You can change that and you can adapt the values. You can even configure the auto-scaling part. And the auto-scaling part is based on the current consumption of your applications, the CPU mostly. So that's how it works. You can even set, for instance, let's say a domain. It could be like demo.qovery.com that I create. And what will happen is that Qovery will provide obviously a load balancer, but also associate that load balancer to this application. So we create everything that we need to route the traffic to that application. And we'll also provide like a TLS certificate. You just need to create a record into your DNS service with a CNAME tab and targeting that value, and that's it. It works. It simply works. Yes. So Let's jump into something. We're still waiting that we can take a look where we are now. Oh, nice. Container built. Okay, it's built. Now the image you see is pushed into my ECR registry, and then it will be like a deploy in a few instants. So that's great. But before, what I want to show you is this is where it starts to be like quite interesting. With Qovery into one environment, you can even deploy not simply an application, but also the database, okay? So let's say that you want to deploy like a Postgres database. Obviously, we manage we support MySQL, MongoDB, Redis, okay? So if I want to deploy a database, I have the choice between two different modes. We have access to the container mode and also the manage mode. So if you're familiar with AWS, you know that AWS, they're providing like RDS for Postgres. They are providing like managed services where they manage like the backups, recovery, scalability, all those things for you. And to be honest, you should not like use anything else if you're running in production. So this is where it starts to be quite interesting because with Qovery, you can manage like two different modes. If you're running in production using like the managed mode, it's your best bet. And you can do that out of the box. You can choose manage mode, the version, and you can even set, hey, do you want to expose publicly your database or not? You can choose that. But you can also create like a container mode. The container mode is the one that is like super cheap, super efficient, spin up very fast, but you don't have like any backups, anything. Okay, it's good for like development environment. It's good when you start to test. And this is quite good because you see from the same place, from the same interface, you can start to manage like those two different modes. Qovery guarantees that it will work the same way, almost the same way, because we can't guarantee everything, but it's the case because we're running tests and so on and so forth, so we can guarantee that. Okay. So here I'm going to use create like, let's say I create that Postgres database, and my instance now is created, but not deployed yet. I can even, so because Qovery takes care of everything, you can create what we call an alias. Let's say that you have created your database, you want to connect now your applications to your database, you need to get the credentials. And Qovery, when you create a new service, it will inject like automatically into all the services from the same environment, those information, for instance, the connection string of your database that is like this. And because I don't want to use that variable into my code, I want to use like a more convenient one, database underscore URL. I can create an alias and change that for my new secret here. You see? So what will happen is that at the build time, at the runtime of my application, I will get access to those credentials that will be like set up and inserted. Okay, that's pretty good. All right. So I'm not gonna get into all the details of that, but I think it's you get the idea. I just want to see where we are now. Okay, domain resolution check. So you see, Qovery is taking care of creating a temporary domain that you see here, waiting for getting access to that domain just to guarantee that when you try to connect to it, then it will work. And once it's done, linked, then you can get access to the application and start to do and try it. Any question? All right. So my application now is deployed, so that's great. I have the domain that is ready. I can take a look. So here I have like some information. I can see in real time. All right. Hey, hello there. This is a new commit. So this is my application that has been deployed on my AWS account. I got a temporary domain with the TLS and it's live. It's running. I can get also access to the logs, application logs. It's great. It's directly streamed from the infrastructure. They are not stored on Qovery. That's something that is very important because we are HIPAA compliant and we are working to be SOC 2, and we don't want to store anything on our side from our customers. It's something that I explain into like another like webinar. I can share the link just after the webinar if you want to get like a deeper look on that part. Okay, so here I have access to the logs in real time. And obviously, if you start to maybe like deploy something that is buggy in production and you want to roll back on something that is working well, then with Qovery, you can choose the version that you want to deploy, the previous working version. And you can even specify the commit ID, take a look at exactly what was like the change, and then from that, you can deploy back. Magic, no? One other aspect is when you make like a change, a code change, let's say that you want to change the code of your applications, because Qovery hooked your repository, basically. So it add like a hooks. So we know exactly when you push, when you push, you commit a change and you push a change, then Qovery will automatically redeploy the new version of your application. It's configurable, obviously, but what's interesting here is that you don't need to do anything specific. Yeah? It's out of the box like possible. Okay, so here it's hello. Okay, because David Thibault is saying that's the best feature in my opinion. I'm gonna like put your name here. It's hello Thibault. And now what you can do is that I change my page and I'll just commit my change and push it. So what will happen here is that the title here will change to Hello Thibault. And if I go back to Qovery, I see that the new version is in deployment. So the deployment is in progress. That's perfect. You see? Obviously, it's configurable here. You have tons of options. I'm not going to get into all those options, but yeah, everything is like configurable. All right. Maybe one last thing that I want to show you, because I have two clusters that are running, is that with Qovery, you can also, I told you, you can manage multiple clusters. And one thing that is super, super impressive is that you can clone an environment to another cluster, for instance. So here, what I'm going to do is that I've picked my production environment, and let's say that I want to create like a staging environment. And what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to clone that one. And magically, I have like a production and a staging environment. And if I look, they are like completely isolated from the other one because it's running on another cluster. And if you look also to the secrets environment variable, they are well compiled, you see? So this is where it starts to be like quite interesting. That's why we have customers that are like using it for managing multiple clusters, improving the velocity of their development team. And it's quite convenient. Even like even a beginner in AWS or anything can just go that way, you see? All right. Let's go back to my any question from that? All right. So what else from that? I told you, so I've just presented like the clone feature, but you also have access to the preview environment feature, meaning that for every single pull request that you create, if you enable that feature, you can get a new environment that is created, duplicating everything from the original environment. Super efficient. It's called Review App, for instance, on Heroku. So you can get exactly the same on AWS, on your AWS. Out of the box, you just need to enable that feature. And then for every pull request, you can try the new thing that you developed. Super convenient for your product team, developers. They can share like the links between the environment and give it a try. And then when they merge back the preview environment, the pull request, then the preview environment automatically disappears, you see? So, yeah. Oh, one question. It's a question about logs, as I think I didn't understand well. Where is it stored? Okay, Francois, thanks for asking. The logs themselves, they are stored on S3, on your S3 bucket. It's on your side. They are streamed directly from the infrastructure. So we have a Loki that is attached to your Kubernetes cluster. And then those logs, they are like directly streamed and stored on S3. Yeah. So when you get into the interface, the Qovery interface, and you want to show the application logs, in fact, we have a service that is called the agent that is streaming directly the information from your S3 bucket to the control plane and to our web interface, for instance. All right. Another feature that is available with Qovery, I told you at the beginning, is that you have access to a Terraform provider, meaning that if you want to start to manage through like infrastructure as code, everything on Qovery, you can do that. It's super convenient, super easy to write and then validate, meaning that if you want to start to validate and make like your infrastructure in a very replicable way, you can. There is no problem on that. And what's next from that? Actually, I'm not digging into all the details because otherwise I will have to spend like 2 hours to explain everything that you can do, but you have access to the documentation. We have like a quite exhaustive documentations, guide section, all those things. So just feel free to get access to the website. But one thing that I'm super proud of is the new web interface that we are working on, the V3, what we call the V3. It's a brand new interface with a new design system. And what's happening is that we are moving out of Angular to React, so that's quite convenient. And also it's 100% open source, meaning that our design system and the web interface is available on GitHub right now, and you can get access to it and contribute. So feel free just to give your feedback, try it on your own, on your local machine. You can just start using Qovery this way and contribute. It's the best way of being like an outstanding product. Okay. And obviously, because that's the most like that's the part that I'm the most proud of is the team, because I'm always like speaking for the whole team. I'm posting a lot on LinkedIn, posting on Twitter, everywhere. I write like tons of posts, blog posts, but everything that will not be possible without the team, to be honest. That's all the team members, the people that are working at Qovery. So I just want to thank them. If you're using the product, if you're a customer and you are a happy customer, we have more than 100 customers using the platform. Just, now that this platform is available because we have like a very good team dedicated that they are working super hard. So just congrats them, and it's amazing. So yeah, do you have like any question from that? I still have some time, so if you have any questions, just feel free to ask it right now. Yeah, there is some delay, so it can be. Thank you, Thibaut. Thibaut was like a very early user, making tons of feedback. So thanks, Thibaut, for supporting us. It's great to see you here. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Taj. As always, you're one of our best supporters as well. Really proud and really happy to work with you. So thanks for supporting us. Oh, good question. When will the V3 will be released? It's planned. So we are going to release the first version of the V3 in the coming days, coming weeks. To be honest, it will be released for it because we want to iterate fast on that version, meaning that we want to put that version into the hands of our customers, users as fast as possible. But we have like two paths, meaning that you can switch to the V3 if you want to give it a try. If it's too buggy, you can go back to the V2. So that's the way it will work. But the final version will be released for June this year. June this year, it will be released and will replace like the V2, the version that we have today. All right. So if you have no other questions at the moment, it's the end of the stream. Feel free, if you want to get access to the platform, go to qovery.com. You can just ask for that. The product is accessible through our website. You have access to all the documentation as well. We have tons of resources explaining how you can use Qovery. Yeah, just feel free to ask. If you have any questions, you can use also Intercom, for instance, if it's private question concerning your need or your stack, you don't want to reveal all the details. Otherwise, you can just ask through the different social network, like on Twitter or LinkedIn. It works. So thank you for being here. I wish you like a good end of the day or beginning of the day, depends on where you are. And we speak later then. Ciao.